What does it feel like to know, with absolute certainty, that you are living the last hours of your life? Not in abstract terms, but in real, tangible minutes. That the glass in your hand is the last you will ever hold, that the face you are looking at is the last you will ever see. This is not a question for philosophers. It was the stark, unfolding reality for the 22 people aboard the RMS Titanic on the night of April 14th, 1912. We know the forensic facts. The iceberg, the sinking at 2:20 a.m., the 1,500 lost. But to understand the Titanic is to step beyond the blueprints and the lifeboat numbers and into the emotional landscape of that final night, a journey from careless joy to unthinkable silence. The evening began wrapped in an illusion of invulnerability. The day had been unnaturally calm, the sea a flat, black mirror under a sky dense with stars. This profound stillness was not just meteorological, it was psychological, feeding the central myth of the voyage. For the elite in first class, the Astors, the Guggenheims, the Strausses, the Titanic was the ultimate confirmation of a world order where their safety was guaranteed by wealth and engineering. In the opulent smoking rooms and under the crystal dome of the grand staircase, the feeling was one of serene assurance. Elderly Isidore and Ida Strauss, the devoted couple, sat reading together in perfect contentment. For the hundreds in steerage, immigrants like young Daniel Buckley from Ireland, the ship was a thunderous promise, a massive steel bridge from an old world of hardship to a new world of possibility. Their feeling was electric hope in second class, among teachers, tourists, and professionals. A warm camaraderie flourished in the homey dining saloon, where a hymn sing-along led by Reverend Ernest Carter fostered a sense of shared, modern adventure. Across all decks, the emotion was a variant of security. The unsinkable ship was not just a slogan. It was a feeling in the air, as tangible as the smell of polished oak and sea salt. This collective confidence persisted even as the world outside turned treacherous. The very calm that soothed the passengers created an optical nightmare, hiding the horizon and masking the outlines of icebergs. On the bridge, the feeling shifted to chilled vigilance. Then, at 11:40 p.m., 3 sharp bells shattered the routine. From the crow's nest, Lookout Frederick Fleet saw the monstrous white wall emerge from the darkness. The resulting impact was not a dramatic crash, but a long, shuddering, intimate tear, a deep, grinding re-yip that resonated through the ship's skeleton. For most passengers, the feeling was curiosity, not fear. First-class survivor Lady Duff Gordon likened it to a gigantic finger rubbing along the side. Many in their berths mistook it for a minor incident, a curious vibration. They remained in a state of benign ignorance, while below, in the flooding mailroom and boiler room 6, the feeling was already one of cold, wet, and futile struggle. The terrible truth began in the bowels of the ship when designer Thomas Andrews accompanied Captain Smith on a swift inspection. The feeling in those flooding compartments was one of dawning professional horror. Andrews did the math. The iceberg had opened too many watertight compartments. His verdict to the captain was a quiet sentence of death. The ship will founder. We have about 2 hours. On the bridge, a cold, stoic dread took hold. They now carried a catastrophic secret. The orders were given: uncover the lifeboats. For the crew, the feeling became a surreal collision of drilled routine and waking nightmare. On the boat deck, the orderly delusion began. Passengers emerged, wrapped in blankets over evening clothes, bemused and annoyed by the disruption. The band assembled and struck up cheerful ragtime tunes like Alexander's Ragtime Band. The music wasn't to quell panic. It was because no panic existed yet. The feeling was one of mild inconvenience, a stubborn belief in protocol and the ship's myth. This delusion was rigidly enforced by social norms. As lifeboats were prepared, the order women and children first was interpreted with stark severity by officers like Second Officer Charles Lytler, who refused to allow any men to board, even when boats left half empty. John Jacob Astor helped his pregnant wife, Madeline, into a boat, asked politely to join her due to her condition, was refused, and stepped back with a cigarette, his feeling a mix of chivalrous resignation and disbelief. In stark contrast, Benjamin Guggenheim and his valet reappeared in full evening dress. "We've dressed in our best," he declared, "and are prepared to go down like gentlemen." His feeling was theatrical defiance. Amidst this, profound love wrote its own endings. Isidor Straus refused a place in a lifeboat, and his wife, Ida, famously renounced hers. "We have lived together for many years," she said. "Where you go, I go." They were last seen sitting quietly together on deck chairs, a portrait of unity stronger than death. Meanwhile, below decks in third class, a different feeling festered: confusion and systemic neglect, language barriers, labyrinthine corridors, and physical gates meant many fought a delayed battle just to reach the boat deck. Their feeling was one of rising panic and bitter, understanding that the ship's class structure extended even to its demise. As the hours bled away, the delusion cracked. The ship's tilt became unmistakable. The deafening roar of steam venting from the funnels screamed the truth the band's ragtime had denied. And then the music changed, the shift to hymns, the solemn notes of "Nearer, my God, to Thee." was the moment the last veneer shattered. The feeling on deck transformed from puzzlement to a collective, chilling acknowledgement of mortality. This was no longer a drill, it was a liturgy. The final hour was a brutal unveiling of human nature in its rawest forms. In the face of the inevitable, feelings polarized. There was cowardice, men disguising themselves to sneak into boats. There was unimaginable courage. The engineers and stokers who remained deep in the drowning bowels, keeping the lights and power on until seawater shorted the circuits, their feeling one of duty unto death. There was faith, Father Thomas Biles hearing confessions and giving absolutions to over 100 terrified souls on the sloping aft deck. There was despair, people beginning to jump into the -2 degrees seawater, preferring a sharp shock to the slow pull of the deep. The ship's final minutes were a sensory hell. The stern rose high into the air, a black silhouette against the stars. The lights flickered, blazed, and died forever. The sound was a horrifying orchestra, the Titanic's own groans of tearing metal, the cataclysmic roar of everything inside, grand pianos, boilers, china, crashing forward, and the screams of over 1,000 souls clinging to the sinking Leviathan. Then came the sounds that haunt history, the reported gunshot-like cracks of the hull breaking, followed by a deep, mournful sob as the ship tore apart. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic was gone, and in its wake, it left not just wreckage, but a sound more terrible than any noise. A long, cold silence, broken only by the gentle lap of waves and a continuous, soul-chilling moan from hundreds of people fighting for life in the freezing sea. For those huddled in the lifeboats, rowing away from the sucking void, the feeling was not relief, but a trauma of guilt and horror that would never leave them. They listened to the dying cries of husbands, friends, and strangers fade into an unbearable quiet. Fifth Officer Harold Lowe, one of the few to muster the courage to row back later, found only 4 people alive in a sea of the dead. The feeling in the boats was a complex, terrible stew of gratitude, shame, and a cold that seeped into the soul. When the Carpathia's lights pierced the dawn, sailing into a seascape littered with deck chairs and icebergs glowing pink, the feeling among survivors was hollow numbness. They had been saved, but they had lost everything: loved ones, possessions, and their fundamental faith in progress, steel, and the infallibility of man's creations. As survivor Mahala Douglas would later write, there seemed to come to us all a feeling of utter loneliness and despair. So, what did the passengers on the Titanic feel? They felt the entire spectrum of human emotion, compressed into 2 hours and 40 minutes. They felt the smug comfort of an age convinced it had tamed nature. They felt curiosity, denial, duty, love, defiance, faith, terror. And for 1,500 souls, the final icy embrace of the Atlantic, their story is not a relic of the past. It is a timeless mirror. It asks us what we would feel, what choices we would make when every social pretense is stripped away. Would we hold a door, give up a seat, play a tune, tell a lie, or say, "I love you" one last time? The Titanic's wreck is a rusting monument on the ocean floor, but its true legacy is etched in these fleeting human feelings. It is a permanent reminder that all our engineering, all our arrogance, and all our social structures are profoundly fragile. In the end, when the lights go out and the water rises, all we truly have is our humanity and the grace or desperation with which we face the unthinkable.